And welcome, everybody. I'm Jamie Green, the Solar Queen, and I am live streaming with Carter Lavin, who is the Director of Membership of CALSA, which is California Solar and Storage Association.
All right, it's great to be here.
Thanks for coming on, Carter. I'm really excited to have you here because there are some things that you and a lot of people in California have been working on. And that is net metering and not taxing the sun and everything. And being that I'm in the solar industry here in California, helping homeowners, I just wanted to bring you on and ask you some questions for not only people that are in the renewable energy space, but also for homeowners and business owners that could very well be affected by what's happening. So thank you for coming on. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and what?
No, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here and chatting with you. You know, I've seen you at a lot of our rallies. Thank you for coming out. It's great to have this conversation, and thank you to everyone tuning in. So a bit about me, I've worked in solar since I was a teenager. So it's been well over a decade that I've been in solar. I've been at CALSA for 7 years, and we as the California Solar and Storage Association are the political voice of the solar industry. You know, the Solar Chamber of Commerce, the Solar NRA, the Solar Teachers Union, however you want to view it. When the utilities try to put taxes and destroy this industry, we are the entity that speaks out and says, hey, the solar industry doesn't like that. We have over 700 member companies, manufacturers, distributors, contractors, brokers, all sorts of folks. And so we are here today to talk about this big attack on the solar industry and how we got to win and how we have to fight back to make that happen.
Yes. And if you're just joining or watching the replay and you are in this industry or you're thinking of solar, share this out because this is very important information that we're going to dive into. So I don't want to waste any of your time or any of the viewers' time. So let's dive into what we've got a series of questions that I'm going to ask Carter, and he's going to share and give you knowledge. So what is the history of net metering in California, and what role does the CPUC play and the utilities play?
Sure. So net metering is the simple policy of it is when you're overproducing at any particular instant that you send extra power to the utility. So let's say it's noon, it's Sunday, you're not at home, your solar panels, they're cranking out power. You send power to the grid. You get a credit on your account for about fair market price. And then at night, when you need to use power, you draw from that. That's net metering. It is the foundational backbone to solar economics here in California and in many states. Europe and other countries do totally different policies, but net metering is the foundational, take a penny, leave a penny of solar. That's been in play for decades now. The California solar market, there's never been a solar without net metering here in California. So the history of net metering is the history of the California solar market. The Utility Commission, the CPUC, they are the bureaucracy part of the government agency that basically says how the grid works, what the rules are. So they're the ones who say, here's what net metering is. And the utilities, PG&E, Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, are, frankly speaking, people who don't really like this. When people like Jamie or folks listening in help save customers thousands of dollars a year on their energy bill, the energy companies aren't happy with that. They don't like the fact that you just took money out of their pockets and kept in your customers' pockets. And so the utilities basically try to work the referees. The CPUC is supposed to be the referees to protect Californians against the utility abuses. And so the utilities say, hey, Utility Commission, why don't you destroy this whole NEM thing? And what's been happening for the last year and a half or so is the Utility Commission put out a proposal for drastic changes to net metering, which was basically a big Christmas gift to PG&E and the other utilities. And so we all need to be very loud and continue to press the commission to basically get them to realize that they're just doing the utilities thing.
Yeah, well, that just kind of answers question number 2 of what role does the CPUC play in the decision-making of changing the net metering policies in California, and who's really, I think that's kind of the question, is who's really behind these net metering changes? And I think we know, but go ahead.
But a key part about that too, though, is so, the utilities ask the Utility Commission, And the commissioners,
Mhm.
there's 5 of them, they are appointed by the governor, and they could be unappointed by the governor. So Governor Gavin Newsom ultimately is the guy in charge. He is ultimately the head honcho that the commission listens to. They look for him.
Yeah.
The commissioners are there to basically do what he thinks is right. And so while the commission is technically the people who are going to, put the stamp or the signature on the final thing, this is all Gavin Newsom's call. And
Mhm.
so the utilities, they know to not just press at the commissioner, they know to also press at Gavin Newsom. And that's why it's very important that we as an industry not just talk to the commissioners, but that we also go to the Capitol and be
And
on
call
Gavin
the
Newsom's front
governor
lawn.
and
Yeah, and like be right there
yeah.
and talk about it.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm sure everyone's paying attention across the country of what's going on with electrifying America, more solar, more EVs. I mean, New York just passed the similar law to California of, by 2035 EVs, but
Yeah.
we're our grid, what's going, we're not ready for that, and we got to vamp up quickly and get it prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the governor of Florida, I just read a headline there about how he's going to veto the anti-solar tax,
Yeah.
like all this stuff. So the governor does play a role in it as well as the CPUC. And I mean,
Well,
there's got to
and
be a happy medium, right?
yeah, well,
Somewhere.
and a key part about this that's very important for I think all of us to keep in mind is the utilities are many things. They are
Yeah.
not fools, and they're definitely not politically foolish. They are some of the most powerful political entities in California. And so when Gavin Newsom says we need a clean energy future, we need electric cars, we need all the solar we can get, PG&E says totally, totally, we need to do that. We as a utility can do that. Jamie has no role to play in this. That solar brokers, that door knock, that anyone in the, you guys are just the kids messing around with the big boy stuff, doing it. PG&E, we got this covered. You all, the solar industry, these like weird roofer type people, you're not needed. And basically the utilities like, let's just do one gigantic project in the middle of the desert, one big power line, call it a day, clean energy future, boom, boom, boom. And so it's really important, I think for those of us who've been around the block a couple of times, we're so used to the fight being, do we do clean energy or not? And that's not the fight in California. The fight is, do you do clean energy, or do you just take whatever PG&E tells you to pay? And because yes, we're going to have a solar powered future in California, but it doesn't have to be a solar powered future where consumers are empowered. It could be, we're talking $1,000 a year fees for anyone who gets solar. We're talking basically zero export for anyone who has solar. We're talking about, the utilities have floated a self-consumption charge, which imagine your grocery store charging you for tomatoes you grow.
Right.
So the net metering 3 proposals are such that it would hurt people who have solar, it would hurt people who have batteries, it hurts existing customers, which is going on and particularly terrible. And so it's really important for us all to keep in mind that California could have a solar powered future that doesn't have you in it. What we're saying is, hey, don't tax the sun. We're all part of the solution.
Right.
Yeah. So the current proposal put out basically in December, nearly a year ago, $8 per kilowatt per month fee, a tax, $8 per kilowatt per month fee on any residential system user.
Is that separate than they call the connection fee or
yeah,
the
so that'd be a separate fee. I forgot what they technically call it. But
I have the net metering policy right in front of me and I can't remember what it's called. Let me see if I can find it.
So there's like interconnection fees and all that stuff. But this would just be a kind of a surcharge for staying connected. And then right now, when you help your customer go solar, they offset about 25 cents a kilowatt hour, something like that. That amount would go for it.
It's like 4.5 cents for excess.
Yeah. So this is a tricky thing that people get wrong constantly, and I wish there was more words. So right now, when let's say it's Sunday, you're overproducing in that minute, but you size your system to cover 80% of your annual load, you're never technically exporting. If that export power that you get if you oversize the system, that is like the 4 cents. However, the utilities proposed changes is that instead of getting about the 27 cents you get per kilowatt hour that you get now, because noon you're overproducing, you're not using that much, you get credit at 27 cents. What they want to do is just credit you at 4 cents. So that is a 70 something, 80% reduction in the value of solar. So we're looking
Yeah.
at 17-year paybacks for a simple residential system. And you're a wonderful salesperson. Maybe you could sell a 17-year payback for a 25-year investment. Most people can't. I've been in solar for over 15 years. The people who are happy with 17-year paybacks went solar 10 years ago, and there was like 12 of those people.
Right.
So this proposal is pretty gnarly.
It is gnarly, and I'm trying to look up it's called the minimum delivery charge. That $10 monthly minimum delivery charge. So this $8 a kilowatt, meaning if somebody has a 5 kilowatt system, they would have to pay $40 monthly to be
just connected to the grid.
Just connected to the grid with their solar system.
Yeah. And one thing particularly about that that's really rough is that, if you're doing a small system, if you're doing just a 2 kilowatt or 3 kilowatt system because you're energy efficient, that fee is a larger percentage of your overall system cost. And so, and it's about a third of all systems are below 5 kilowatts. So that whole chunk of the market, the smaller market, that goes away. If the net metering policy as written goes through. And this is why on October 11th, we're doing a big rally at the Capitol, a big festival. The band Ozomatli is going to come play. And we need as many folks who care about the future of solar to be there in Sacramento, October 11th.
Yeah. So that's my next question is, when are they likely going to vote for this to, either keep it or change it, or can they reject what's currently proposed, or did they draft what's proposed? Like who actually proposed NEM 3.0?
Yeah. Like what's going on? So the extremely short version is, because the long version is very long and the extremely short version is back a year and a half ago, the Utility Commission opened up the NEM 3 proceedings. Basically, the commission is the referee, is the easiest way of thinking about them. So they say, hey, everybody, what do you think should be NEM 3? And the utilities show up and they say, it should have these giant fees. It should happen instantly. It should, this is being recorded. I was going to say other language, but forget the solar industry, boo. And then we as a solar industry came in and say, hey, look, fees are ridiculous. We're open to changing net metering a little bit. It should be phased in over 8 years. That was the council proposal. And then the CR, other groups can also kind of throw in their 2 cents. Someone says, oh, we should fix this one thing about apartments or whatever. And then the commission says, okay, we'll close the lid on it. We're going to sit with this and come back to you in a couple months and tell you what we think it's going to be. So they let it stew. And then in December of last year, they put out a proposal that was basically the wish list of the utilities. We as an industry flipped out. We delivered over 100,000 public signatures to the governor's office. We did big rallies in LA and San Francisco at the commission there. And the governor stepped in and he told the commission, hey, think a bit harder about what you're doing. The commission said, okay, we're going to think a bit more about this. And that was in January. They did that because we pushed back so hard. The vote was supposed to be January. It was supposed to be done then. The commission came back in May and said, hey, we thought about this. We have a couple more questions. And those questions were not, one of the questions, for example, was like, hey, we think that these per kilowatt fees for residential systems might not be fair. We should also apply it to commercial systems. What does everyone say? To which we, and Brad Hefner, under policy team, submitted several hundreds of pages of documents about that. We did more protests, and the commission said, okay, we're hearing solar people aren't happy with this whole complete destruction of the solar industry thing. And they said that they would put out a new proposal at the end of September, and that they would then vote on it, most likely in November. That proposal didn't come out.
Right.
That was that's the dog that didn't bark. That was the biggest news in solar in the last month or so, is the fact that they missed that deadline. And the reason why that's such a big deal is because this is an intensely political process. The solar industry is very politically popular. Solar is more popular than free peanut butter and free chocolate, because some people are allergic to both those things. But like solar, super popular. And so if you were the governor of California and you were about to swing in and save the solar industry from the destruction by the utilities, when you want to do that before the election, like when you want to say, hey, everyone, here's this wonderful thing I did before the election.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the announcement about what the utility commission is going to do is going to likely be after the election is a strong sign that maybe this is something that they're not super proud of. They think that not every Californian is going to be really happy with.
Right.
And so that's why it's extremely important, but they haven't released it yet. So, they
Mhm.
could change it up. And so, if we get a couple thousand people to Sacramento on October 11th next week to stomp and shout and say, hey, don't tax the sun. We need a solar powered future that's in the hands of people. The commission could still change it. They could still say, like, they're there to enact the people's will. So the commission could still say, hey, look, we're hearing that people actually like the solar thing. Let's have this phase in over 8 years. Let's get rid of that fee and we'll just do that. Like, there's so many things they can work with, but they're not going to do it unless they feel that people really care and that the governor really cares. And the governor's
Right.
not going to step in if he thinks that this is just something that, there's 1,000 decisions the governor makes a day. Does he think this is something that people are going to care about? Yes, no.
Well, and he sure is taking to, social media to talk about these little direct deposits they're going to get for all of the inflation that everyone's suffering from, and, this and that. And I'm just waiting for him to make an announcement of saying, utility companies, you got to stop this. Because it does feel like the utility companies are holding homeowners and business owners hostage with their rate increases that are in for EV, not solar power, but just EV rates in PG&E territory. They're already in the 50-cent range. If you charge your EV, or anytime, if you have an EV, if you registered over or switched over to the EV rate, I think it's 52 cents or 50, might be 55 cents for peak usage. And that's not when you're charging your car. It's just when you're using power from 4 to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And typically, for those that haven't switched over, it's 42 cents to 48 cents for peak and 40. I mean, it's just like, I didn't think we would see these rates for several more years down the road.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing that, like, the utilities, they're saying, look, we're losing customers to solar people. They're also posting record profits.
Right.
Which they're just, I had clarified to someone, they are for-profit entities. They are posting record profits.
Yes.
But so they're saying, oh, we're losing so many people to solar. So many people are going solar. 150,000 people are going solar. Everybody and anybody is getting solar in California. If you're the utility, you're presented with two choices. One, you can offer a better product at a better price. So you can offer more reliable power and lower rates. That sounds hard. That's not fun. You can't get record profits if you lower your prices like that. The other one is spend $40-something million on lobbying and try to convince the government to just shut down the solar industry by making it illegal. They decided that second option is a lot easier than the first. And it's our job, it's your job, it's you person listening in, to show up and be loud about it to prevent it from happening. Because this happened in Nevada. Nevada shut down their solar market. They gutted net metering, and overnight layoffs went out. Like, when you look at the market, that is not a gentle decline. That was a crash.
Yes.
And then people flipped out. And then eventually they got overturned and the market came back.
Right.
The people say things like, oh, well, solar will be fine. It's like, yeah, the concept of solar in California, let's say net metering 3 goes through and it crashes, and 5 years there's no solar market in California, but there's a huge groundswell of public activity, and 7 years from now it gets made illegal and goes. It's like, cool. How was your mortgage payments in those 7-year intervening periods? How was your career? What did you do? Like, it's like solar might be fine. People's careers won't be. And so it's really important when people say like just, let's be like kind of blatant. People say, oh, well, we would never let it happen. And you say, okay, well, talk to your neighbors. Do your neighbors know about this? Do your neighbors know that this would happen? They say, well, oh, people would flip out if it happens. Well, the way you prevent things politically is you flip out beforehand. You say, hey, don't you dare touch that, don't you dare touch that button. Here's all of us so angry. And if
Yes.
people in office don't see everyone so angry on the streets, they'll say, who cares if I destroy the solar industry?
Right. So not everyone is a homeowner. Some
Hmm.
people, I mean, a lot of people live in apartments,
Hmm.
condos and townhouses, and perhaps, depending on their HOA, they can't always go solar, and also low income housing.
Yeah.
So how would this NEM 3.0, or how would that even affect those that are developing like community solar, or providing renewable energy for things like an
Yeah.
apartment complex, or things like a low income housing development?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot in that question. I'm going to take parts on this. So
Yeah.
one, I'm going to talk about my favorite example, which is schools. So
Yeah.
schools throughout California are going solar. And one big thing a school administrator once said at one of our rallies, she said, when PG&E raises rates, I can't raise my price on students. When PG&E
Right.
raises rates, I have to take money out of classrooms and put it into
Mhm.
PG&E's pockets. And so one reason that solar benefits everyone throughout California is just it keeps money locally. Your
Yeah.
school, whether or not you have solar or not, you have teachers. There's more teachers. There's more money in your schools because it's less to PG&E. Same thing happens with all the farmers going solar who are making
Yep.
almonds. Like it keeps prices low because it happens there. The
Mhm.
other big part about solar, let's say, when your neighbor goes solar, that benefits you. And a
Mhm.
big part about it is because your neighbor just put in basically a $20,000 investment into the electric grid. That is power that's being made locally. That is power that is in your local community. So that's less stress on the grid. It's sort of
Right.
like, ideally, you want every single one of your neighbors to take the bus if you drive. It's just like you have easier roads. There's less wear and tear on your roads. You want everyone else in the world to telecommute. And when your neighbors go solar, it's kind of the same thing. And so renters benefit a lot from people going solar. Um, and the utilities, they're trying to turn Californians against each other. They're trying to say, oh, well, they have solar and they don't, and da 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 da. And it's just classic divide and conquer. And that's why we're getting people at this rally, the Everybody Under the Sun rally next week, to really show it's like solar users, solar customers, people who maybe not have solar yet, like we all benefit from this.
Yeah,
Having
because
clean local.
the utilities kind of make it like pin the renters versus the owners, or those that have solar and those that don't, saying the people who have solar are causing your rates to go up, because I mean, I hear that
Because
argument all the time.
yeah, because because the utilities are having record profits, and so we got to blame someone, or else you're going to say,
Yeah.
wait a minute, what'd you just
Where's this?
do?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
So
and
I
that's a
have.
big.
Oh, go ahead.
Go for it. I'm never going to stop talking, so you might as well just
No, that's okay.
go
I
to the
can
next thing.
talk too for a long time, but
Yeah,
we'll try and keep
yeah,
this close to the 30-minute
yeah,
mark, or less.
yeah,
But for the existing people that are on NEM, or the
yeah,
original NEM and NEM 2.0, what would this mean if NEM 3.0, of whatever it is that the
yeah.
CPUC votes
Yeah,
on, how will
yeah.
that affect existing solar customers in
Yeah, so
California?
one of the absolute worst parts of the NEM 3 proposal is that they propose cutting 5 years off of your existing net metering agreement. So let's say you went on NEM 1 or NEM 2, you were promised 20 years of that agreement. So that
Mhm.
20 years of you send power to the grid, you get credited X, Y, like your financials, everything you've done is based off of a 20-year assumption. The Utility Commission, because of utility lobbying, is proposing knocking that down to 15 years. And some people might say, okay, well, the system paid for itself in 9 years. Maybe it's okay. It's like, there's plenty of people who have 20-year PPAs or 20-year financing agreements. This will put them underwater. There are
Yeah.
school districts. There are school districts that if this goes through, they will be underwater. They will owe more money on their solar financing because not anything wrong with solar. Solar is still doing the same thing, but because the governmental changes retroactively hurt them, and that gets teachers fired, which I think
Yeah.
that's the part that's absolutely absurd to me.
Yeah.
And that's why folks are showing up saying like, there's there's 1.5 million Californians who have solar already. And a lot of them are speaking out against this. They're not planning on buying a second array, but they're like, don't put me on that NEM 3 thing. That's absurd.
Yeah.
It's also probably very illegal, but one thing that's important to know is just because it's illegal doesn't mean a government agency can't do it for like 2 or 3 years while the legal system works its way through. So,
Mhm.
things don't just like automatically happen. And so you need to really fight and push back. So existing customers are very much under threat by NEM 3 as well.
I mean, this just, me think, could there be a class action lawsuit against the utilities?
It's if this so one, this would have to go through.
Yeah.
But if it does, it would be maybe against the utility commission. One of the things that's a little tricky is that the utility commissions are the ones who set the rules and the laws. So they have the ability to change the rules, and
Yeah.
so it's a tricky thing. It's a tens of millions of dollars type issue, and it's not a guaranteed victory. So it is
Right.
a lot easier to show up with 1,000 friends or so in Sacramento next
Mhm.
week and get the governor to say, "Oh, wait a minute, obviously we shouldn't do this. What am I doing?" And it's the nice thing about Governor Newsom and working on this is he's not anti-solar. It's just not a priority of his. There's a lot
Right.
going on in the day, and it's just one of those, like, if this is always item, it's kind of like when you're selling solar. If this is a family's 11th top priority, and every day they do the top 10, like, that doesn't really help
Yeah.
you.
I mean, it's true. It gets put on people's back burner,
Yeah,
back burners of decision or priority.
yeah.
Hi, Jason Van Gardner.
Hey,
Hey,
Jason.
Jason lives on the East Coast, I believe. So
Yeah.
he's not affected yet by
Not yet. Well,
not yet.
a big thing for East Coasters, especially people in more red states. You know, if California guts net metering, the attack ads in other states basically write themselves. It's going to be,
Yeah.
net metering, a policy even crazy California didn't want. Why are we doing it here? Like, it just, there are net metering fights in North Carolina and all other markets because it's just this foundational policy. And if the utilities here win, it basically shows every other utility like, oh, I could destroy the solar industry. I don't have to just deal with this. And
Yeah.
it gives them a playbook. And the big news also is, if and when we win, it also shows, hey, other utilities, back off. The solar industry has teeth. Don't mess with
Right.
us.
Well, like Massachusetts, by the end of the year, will have implemented a 65% increase in their electricity rates. And Rhode Island is
Yeah.
implementing a $50 fee per month, or, for every, I
Hmm.
think, 400 kilowatt. Once you go over 400 kilowatt hours of usage,
Hmm.
and it starts an incremental $50 additional
Yeah.
fees by the utility company. So it's going to force people to be like, again, feeling like they're being held hostage, and their only relief is solar power.
Yeah. And
And
that's going to
and the
make, the solar is, you're right, solar is the escape hatch. And so utilities are finding all these different tricky policy things. It's like, bolt shut the escape hatch and say,
yeah,
you can't do this. So
yeah. So what I did ask, why is storage with solar so important, but is how important is I should have rephrased the question.
how,
Is
yeah.
storage important, to the homeowner who gets solar if NEM 3.0 passes?
Yeah. So right now, about 15% of all solar projects that get installed have batteries with them, have
Mhm.
storage. Those are generally projects that do like zero export, so that you are never sending power back over the line. With the NEM 3 proposal, you never want to sending power over the line is basically valueless. And so you're going to do a small system, so you're never overproducing, and you're going to have a small battery just in case. However,
Yeah.
batteries are still pretty pricey. Batteries are hard to get. And so even if you say, okay, well, we'll go from, every project will now have batteries, it's like, yes, but the market will shrink 80%. And so, yes, that's what the life raft looks like, is smaller
Yeah.
project with small batteries. But
Mhm.
as you know, battery accessibility is hard. Battery
Yep.
availability, battery prices are rough. Um, And so us all going to a mandatory, Hawaii market, which was a zero
Right.
export overnight,
Yep.
that's still, I'm not saying, I've never said this will destroy the entire solar industry, just 80 something percent of it.
Right.
And
Right.
and as you might think about, it's not like the utilities will lay off their lobbyists next year. They're like, well, good job, lobbying team. You killed 80% of the solar industry. You're fired now. They'll say, great, go after the next 20%. Try to pass a battery tax or whatever,
Well, this also plays into the conversation for people in California who are buying new construction, because there's a solar offset requirement for all new build. And then
Yeah.
coming down the pike in a couple of years, it's going to be battery storage mandatory as well.
So it's the solar mandates if it makes economic sense to have solar. So if they add
okay.
all these taxes and it
Yep.
doesn't make economic sense, the mandates go away.
The building code mandates for
Yeah.
solar offset.
Yeah. If
Gotcha.
it doesn't make economic sense because of the taxes. So how NEM 3 works directly impacts the final market.
Yeah.
And so this is why, as we go into our wrap up, we really need as many folks there next week in Sacramento at the Capitol. I love your question right there. So the reason, so what do rallies do? Do they do anything? So rallies are actually extremely helpful, particularly on this issue, because rallies show that people care. Rallies say, hey, this really matters. And you say, oh, well, everyone knows, everyone loves solar. Don't the customers' numbers speak for themselves? And the thing is, they don't. If you are an elected official, you say, okay, what's the will of the people? I'm getting calls about healthcare or schools. Like, I'm not getting calls about solar stuff. And you're like, well, that's why we have to show up. We have to show up to say, this is really powerful. This really matters. Put your attention on this. And so there's the SaveCaliforniaSolar.org website. You can go to calsa.org, get the details about the event. It's going to be a great festival, food trucks, and Ozomatli is going to be playing. But we need to shake the Capitol. We need to get a lot of news coverage on it, because this is a pretty easy choice for the governor. When this is in the spotlight, if he has the microphone put right in his face and he says, hey, whose side are you on? Are you picking Jamie and everybody else? Or are you picking PG&E?
Right.
I think that's an easy choice, but we need to put a lot of pressure on, or else that question doesn't get asked to him, and else he's able to just, work on other things. So I expect to see you there.
I'm going to be there. And I have one last question when it comes to the NEM 3.0 and the major utilities. So PG&E, SCE, SDG, and E. This doesn't necessarily affect the municipalities that provide their own electricity, or does it?
Correct. So SMUD and LADWP and like the 40 other municipal utilities are not part of this process. However, what we've seen, especially with Imperial Irrigation, Palo Alto, and other ones, is those folks have already been cutting down net metering. Some of you might say, oh, Imperial, I've never heard of that. It's because they got rid of it. But for a lot of folks, it's because they got rid of net metering there. And SMUD and LADWP, frankly, these folks try to be just a little less bad than the other big utilities. And if all of a sudden they see their neighbors doing all this, they're like, oh, okay, so we could do this too. Like, that's going to be the next battle. That's the next line of defense. So better to show up now and prevent disaster rather than try to pick up the pieces afterwards.
Yeah. So the people that can come to the rallies, it can be homeowners, it can be business owners, it could be people that believe in green energy. It can be people that are in the solar industry, because I've been to the last two in San Francisco. I spoke to the CPUC. And it was a wide landscape of people there voicing.
People are flying up from San Diego. People are driving down from Redding. If you would miss solar in California, come on out.
Anyone in the solar industry, and not even just, the solar sales people and the installers, but even panel manufacturers and inverter manufacturers, it affects everyone. And so we just want I wanted to do this so we could get awareness out, and that rallies do actually make a difference. People can show up and strengthen numbers, like the Golden State Warriors always talk about. And if I learned anything from my communications courses, one voice is like equivalent to 50. So if 1,000 people show up, that's equivalent to like 50,000 people showing up. But
Yeah.
we would love to see as many people there.
Yeah, that's people make a difference, and you know,
Yep.
come on out. Like people are bringing their kids, all sorts of things. So
Yep.
I'll see you
Well,
next week.
Carter, thank you for your time. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
It's been
it.
great.
And make sure to share this out to your network if it's helpful. And thank you so much. I'll see you next Tuesday.
See you Tuesday. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye.
Bye, folks.